Whether you need help paying your mortgage or you just want to be smart with your money, house hacking can make your home work harder than you do. Today we're here with Tabitha, and we're going to talk about some house hacking strategies. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, right?
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What exactly is house hacking?
So the easiest definition of house hacking is that you're renting parts of your home in order to offset your mortgage payment or to help pay your mortgage payment. But we're going to go over like a bunch of different ways to get creative with real estate, and they won't all exactly fit that definition, I don't think. Not when we get to the end. Okay. But that's what it is, essentially, is like renting out part of the home so that you don't have to pay the whole mortgage payment yourself.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can dig it. All right. What's the easiest or simplest house hack?
So the easiest way to get in this, like the beginner house hack deal, is you already own your single family home or you're buying your home and you've got extra rooms to rent out. So roommates, essentially. But you're landlording, right? Because you own the house. So this is the most cost-effective entry point. It's great for beginners. But you need really good screening and tenant management.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some pretty terrible roommates in the past, so.
I bet. Yeah. So you'd think twice about like what kind of questions you might ask somebody or like what you're looking for before you say yes to somebody, right?
For sure.
Interestingly, renting out room by room actually can generate more income than if you're like renting out the entire house. I thought that was interesting.
That makes sense, though.
So the leases, so when you're renting out, you could either do short-term, mid-term, or long-term leases. And we'll probably dive more into the short-term stuff, but like that's short-term is 30 days or less. Mid-term is like 31 days to less than a year. And then the long-term leases are like 1 year or more. So midterm leases can be really great, like traveling nurses need midterm leases. You know, they're going to be somewhere for 3 months or 6 months at a time. So renting out rooms works especially well in places that have colleges, hospitals, or like urban centers, you know, where you've got people coming and going. That's where renting out a room works the best. I don't think you would see a great return on your investment if you're trying to rent a room out and you live kind of in the middle of nowhere. But if you've got, you know, it doesn't have to be just the room. Like if you've got an ADU or if you've got a basement apartment or a mother-in-law suite or something like that, those are really nice spaces that you can rent out and kind of still have separate living space.
You said an ADU. What is that?
The ADU is the accessory dwelling unit. So
what does that mean?
Right. It's basically like a fully functioning living space that's separate from your home, but it's on the same property. So like, I mean, I'm sure you could think of some examples of this, right?
Well, my first thought would be a mother-in-law suite. You already said that.
Yeah, mother-in-law suite. The like putting a tiny home in your backyard. Or like if you have a guest house or carriage house or something like that. Also think garages, because there's 2 ways for garages to be ADUs. Like you could convert an entire garage into an ADU. Or, you know, people will put ADUs above the garage. So they still park there, but then they create like this whole apartment over the garage situation.
But these are then detached garages in that case too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, like a 2-car detached garage sitting there on your property, and you just, boop, add a little apartment over the top of it.
Just don't leave a car running.
But when we talk about a fully functional living space, you know, there's some like required components, right? So make some guesses here. Like, what do you think is a required component for an ADU to be a fully functional living space?
Well, a bathroom.
Okay, yes.
At least most of a bathroom. right? Like
Three
toilet.
quarters.
3/4. Okay. I was like, at least a toilet. That
Yeah,
way.
so you don't have to have the tub shower combo, but you have to have the sink, the toilet, and either the tub shower or just the shower.
Okay.
But it has to be like a minimum 3/4 bathroom.
Let's say a kitchenette.
And when you say kitchenette versus like whole kitchen, so the minimum required stuff in the kitchen or the kitchenette is a sink with running water, some sort of cooktop or cooking device.
Like
So
even just like a stove, like a little eye to plug in or something. Would
yeah,
that
I mean, it's
do?
usually a stove, but I've definitely seen people like hot plating it up, you know. But a stove would be better.
Yeah.
And some place for food prep and storage, which usually includes a fridge too. Um, but like, microwave's not required, dishwasher's not required. It's not required to have its own room. It can just, I've seen places where they just have kind of like a couple of cabinets and a stove and a sink and just kind of like takes up tiny bit amount. And that's good enough for a
Right.
kitchenette. All right, a kitchen, a bathroom. What else?
Well, you said a room wouldn't be required, so just a space to sleep.
Yeah, like a living space and a sleeping space, but they can be like if you think studio, that could be the same place. Like I stayed at an Airbnb one time where a Murphy bed came out in the living room, and so something like that is acceptable. That's fine. So yeah, sleeping space, living space, kitchen, bathroom. I got 3 more.
Gosh, really? Oh my gosh. That's all I could think of.
Well, what about in the winter?
Oh, heat. Okay.
Heat.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to have heat. And it can't be space heaters. It has to be like built-in heat. Air conditioning is not a requirement, only heating. Also, it has to have 2 points of egress. So this is sort of like basement bedrooms, when we say, is this basement bedroom an actual bedroom? Does it have, the door to get in, and does it have that egress window? So it's the same with the ADUs where they need to have 2 points of entry and exit. And it's usually just a door and a window.
Okay.
It's not that big of a deal, a door and a window. And what's the last one? The last one is it has to have a dedicated entrance that's separate from the main house. So like it wouldn't be technically an ADU if you had to come in the house and like walk through the house to get downstairs to a basement apartment. But if you've got a house that's set up where the back door goes like straight down, and then you can put a door to the main house here, and so they have their own entrance to the basement, then it qualifies as this separate, fully functional living space. So that's all the stuff, that would make a fully functioning living space.
Wasn't there a new law that was passed recently about ADUs?
Yeah, in 2024, Colorado actually, because there was all this stuff where like if people wanted to add an ADU, they had to go get it permitted. They might have had to mess around with their zoning. It all like it would take months to try to get it approved by the city. And there were some cities or jurisdictions that were actually outlawing them and saying like nobody's allowed to have an ADU. But Colorado passed this law last year that basically said in the entire state, anyone can have an ADU. They do not need to have special permitting or permission. They can have an ADU. But you still have to comply with the city or the county's like building codes.
Permits.
So yeah, so stuff with permits, stuff about like the size that the ADU can be. Like I knew of a property where when I looked into that, like the ADU couldn't be any more than 20% bigger than the main house. So it has to be like you couldn't have a main house and then build an ADU that was just as big or bigger than the main house. It had to be smaller. And you have to follow the setbacks. So if a city says, you can't build until you're 20 feet inside of your property line, if you don't have enough room to build and still have that 20 feet between your building and your property line, then you're not going to be able to get the permitting or whatever, because you have to follow all of those building codes and setbacks and things.
Definitely do your research on that then before.
Definitely. I feel like that's every episode.
Yeah.
So do your research.
All your research.
So that's ADUs.
That's a lot of information on that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Okay. So what's another house hack then?
So another way to house hack is this multi-unit property. So I'm talking duplexes, triplexes, quads, and this is where you buy the whole thing. So let's just say we're going to buy a duplex, and then I'm going to live in one side of the duplex, and I'm going to rent out the other side of the duplex. This is fantastic for a couple reasons, because number one, you have your totally own living space, different from the room renting out rooms in your house, right? Where you basically feel like you have roommates. But this is, an entirely separate thing, even though it's attached. But the other thing that's cool about it is that, you can buy the whole thing as your primary residence because you're going to live there, which means that you can take advantage of the lowest interest rates available to you. You can use an FHA loan, a VA loan, or a conventional loan. So like all of the loan types are available to you for multi-unit properties. There are some cases where you can use the projected rental income from the other unit or units to help you qualify. Like they'll count it as more income for you, and that'll help you qualify to buy the whole thing.
That's one thing that I've wanted to do.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can always, like, if you buy these multi-unit places, you always have the option of moving out later and keeping it as a cash flowing rental, cash flowing asset. Yeah.
So then the big question too, I guess not that big, but what about an Airbnb?
Yeah. So these are the short-term rentals, right? VRBO is like that too. So the STRs are short-term rentals like Airbnb, anything 30 days or less. And you can do that. They can really contribute a lot to paying down your mortgage, because you know how I said earlier that if you rent out room by room, you can sometimes make more money than if you were renting the whole house for 12 months at a time or whatever. Well, Airbnbs are like that. If you're able to keep it rented and you don't have a lot of vacancies, oftentimes you can make a lot more money with an Airbnb than you can by renting it out 12 months at a time. And you can Airbnb a room, right? So you don't have to have an ADU or a separate living space. Like all you really need is an extra room. And you can start, trying to collect that Airbnb money, right? But Airbnbs are super management intensive, like especially if you're doing it yourself. And there's companies out there that'll manage your Airbnb for you. But when you think about the turns, right? Like you got to get in there and like do all the laundry and do all the cleaning every time after somebody, leaves before the next person comes. And so it's interesting because it's more work, but that actually keeps your property in better shape than if you're doing long-term leases, because you've got eyes on and you're, taking care of damage or repairs that need to be done. Like you're doing those all the time as they happen, right?
Right.
It's not like at the end of 12 months, you haven't been to your property in a year, and now you walk in and find out like how much stuff broke that they never tell you about. And now you have thousands of dollars of, expenses to try to turn it for the next renter. Like,
Right. You never know what animals they brought in or whatever the case. Goodness, I couldn't even imagine. Yeah.
But the Airbnb thing can be risky. So like you need to make sure to check for STR restrictions in your city or county or wherever your jurisdiction is. And those are changed. Like part of the reason it's risky is because those rules and regulations and laws and ordinances, like those can change anytime. We saw that happen in Denver. Airbnb exploded and Denver put the kibosh on it. Like Denver says, sure, you can Airbnb your home, but only if it's your primary residence. So you have to be living there. And you can only short-term rental it for, I don't think that's the thing. You can only rent it out with short-term rentals up to 90 days out of the year. So even if you have an extra bedroom or two, if you're in Denver, you cannot rent that out all year long. It's supposed to be capped at 90 days. They make you get a permit, and I don't know how they're doing this or whatever, but like they are checking. I have a friend who had to sell a property. She lived in a property. They bought the property next door. This one was in her name. The other one was in her husband's name. They were Airbnb this one, and it was great until somebody from the city showed up, sat outside their house for like some amount of time and watched them come home. And he watched both of them walk into this house, and nobody walked into this house. And they go, you know what? This isn't actually your primary residence because it's about your point of return. And when you returned home, you didn't return here. You returned here. And they shut their Airbnb account down. Like they canceled all of the reservations that were on it, shut it down, just immediately. Like, and I didn't realize that like the city was so like in cahoots with Airbnb. Like I didn't know they had that kind of power with Airbnb. Right. So those are some examples of why Airbnb can be a little risky.
So is that still the case? The regulations with that?
Yeah, this whole thing about like you can't Airbnb for more than 90 days in any 1 year. Like, and it has to be your primary residence. You have to live there. You can't. So what they wanted to do was stop all of these investors because, like I said, you can make more money on an Airbnb than a long-term rental. Right. So they wanted to stop all the investors from buying everything and turning everything into Airbnb rentals.
Yeah.
You know, I think the city didn't want that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can understand that part, but
neighborhoods, like people don't want renters coming in and out of their neighborhood constantly, you know, strangers.
Yeah.
Stranger danger.
Especially on a constant basis like that. I can get that. So is that it, or are there more house hacks?
Okay, so we kind of talked about it earlier when I mentioned like you could move out and keep it and continue renting it out and have it be a cash flowing asset, right? That sort of nomad strategy where you're buying something, living in it, and then you're moving to another place and keeping it, that is a strategy for how you build a little real estate empire of rentals, right? Mm-hmm. And people have made a lot of money doing this, and people have set themselves up financially really well by doing this. And I get it. Not everybody wants to be a landlord. I will just say again, you don't have to be so much of a landlord. You could just plan to spend 10% and hire a property management company, and they'll take care of almost all of it for you. So that's a great like long-term strategy. But also you can do this live-in flip thing where like maybe you move into something that is, you know, needs some love, right? It hasn't been renovated in a long time. It needs to be updated. It hasn't been. You can get it for a better price than other things that have been recently renovated. So you move into this home that's a little bit lower priced because the kitchen's from 1982 and so are the bathrooms. And then you live there at least 2 years. But while you live there, you fix it up and you renovate it and you do some remodeling. And we say 2 years because as long as you're in it for 2 years for your as your primary residence, then when you sell it, you shouldn't have to pay capital gains tax. But check your tax professional on that because I am not a tax professional. But yeah, you live in it for 2+ years while you're upgrading it, and then you sell it, and maybe you buy another one and you do the same thing again. And I've heard of people doing that strategy, this live and flip, and they take all of the proceeds and they put it into the next one, and then they have more proceeds that they put into the next one. And pretty soon they have either paid cash for their dream home, or they have enough built up to buy their dream home and have like a really low monthly payment. Now, that strategy is one that's really great for people who are handy.
Yes.
Or, plan to spend some money on renovations because, yeah, it's a good strategy. But that live and flip, that's another example of that sweat equity that we talked about on the affordable housing and rent to own programs episode. We talked about sweat equity. That's exactly what you're doing, is you're building up this sweat equity and then using it to buy the next one. Also, you can stack that with other hacks because, you have to be willing to live inside the project. And if you're going to stack it with other hacks, like having roommates or renting out a room, I suppose you'd have to find roommates who were okay kind of living in the middle of construction. But, sometimes it's not as big a deal as others. Like if the main floor is fine and you're renovating the basement, like big deal.
Right.
So it takes time, you have to have a little budget for some of those renovations, and you have to be willing to live in the project, which for anybody who's lived in construction, I know that there are a lot of those people who say never again.
I never had that experience like living in it, so only on the outside, not on the inside.
So it's dirty. It's so like everything is just dirty and dusty constantly.
I could imagine that.
Yeah. And you're just always having it, like, you have one bathroom that's closed down, so you have to, like, go to the other like, it's all these little inconveniences.
As long as you have a second bathroom, right?
Mm-hmm. Or a porta potty. I don't know. But it's all these little inconveniences, but it goes back to this whole thing about getting creative in service to the long-term goal, right? Like if you understand that the long-term goal is to have this financial asset that's working for you and that, you have it for a long time, the things, some people are willing to do more than others to get to their goal.
Right. Yeah.
And living in construction might be one of the sacrifices that you want to make.
Very true.
For your financial future.
So something that we haven't talked about yet is buying with other people.
Yeah, buying with other people is a great idea if you can get all the pieces in place. There's some major risks to doing something like that with other people, but married people do it all the time and then get divorced. So I just don't see any reason why you wouldn't at least look at the possibility of co-buying with other people. It's not like it's any safer if you're married, necessarily. But before we talk about co-buying, I should also mention co-signing, because you could have somebody co-sign on your loan and they're not on your property. So they don't necessarily own the property. They didn't buy it with you, but they used their income, their credit score, their debt to income ratio combined with yours in order to help you qualify for the loan. Now, they're not on the deed to the mortgage. They are responsible for the loan, and it reports to their credit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is most often like parents. It's something that parents do, but it could literally be anyone. But the thing about it is that once they're on that loan and it's reporting to the credit bureaus, it's this situation where, like, if you don't make the payments, they either have to make the payment or it's going to start negatively reporting on their credit as well. That's the risk they're taking with the co-signing. And so they're taking that risk without having they're not collecting any equity. They're not on the house. They don't own the house, right? So it's really just someone who's willing to
take that risk.
Yes, willing to take that risk on you.
Right. So who exactly can buy a house together?
Anyone. Like friends, family, married couples, romantic partners, even strangers. Like there's even strangers have gotten together to buy, like, that's usually vacation homes. and then they sort of treat it like a timeshare, like they all have this time that they use it or whatever. But yeah, even strangers can buy together. So you can split the down payment, the monthly expenses, and the equity. So when you're co-buying with other people, and I run across this all the time because we're working with polycules, right? So it's not just the married couple or the engaged couple that's ready to buy their house. Like, we're working with some, complicated relationship dynamics, and it doesn't matter. They can all be on the loan. They can all be on the deed. There's nothing saying they can't. But the thing I would say about co-buying is that prevention is protecting you. You want to plan upfront, not in crisis. You want to have clear agreements in place, both cohabitation agreements and agreements about the ownership of the house.
Yeah, I would think it would be vital to plan for any breakups or moving or any changes in life.
Yeah, so when you're doing this planning, some of the stuff that you want to talk about is like, the percentage of ownership, who owns how much. Like, is everybody going in equal shares, 50-50? Everybody brought the same amount to the down payment and closing costs? Or like, is it unequal and you need to kind of spell out like, I own 60%, this person owns 40%? Because you can own it anyway, right? Like, you can structure that however you want. And you also want to think about like what happens to a person's share of the property if they pass away.
Right.
And that's determined by how they took title on the house. So if they took title as joint tenants, then if someone passes away, their share automatically goes to the other person or people. But if they took title as tenants in common, that means that when a person passes away, their share goes to their heirs, whoever that may be. And that may be something that the probate court decides, if they don't have estate planning in place. And then you have this person over here that now owns half the house with, this person's ex-stepkid or something. I don't know.
So that could be a whole nother
Yeah. So like, these are the things that you want to talk about ahead of time, right?
another topic for sure.
Yeah, like who's contributing how much of the down payment and the closing costs, but also what about monthly expenses? What about repairs? What about an exit strategy? Like, when somebody, so we own this together. This person just got an amazing new job in another state and they need to sell and move because they can't afford two places. Well, it'd be nice if there's some sort of agreement in place as to what would happen in that situation, because what usually happens, this is divorces all the time. These people are getting divorced and they can't, neither one of them can afford the house on their own. They're forced to sell. They have to sell.
Right.
And so in these co-buying situations, you can end up in the same thing where you're forced to sell. But, there could be ways of structuring it or agreements in place or whatever so that, this person isn't displaced when this person gets a new job and wants to go. Also, like cohabitation agreements and about like using the house, like how often do they get to use it? When, how can they use it? Is it just free reign and I can have a party with 50 people anytime I want? 50 of my closest friends?
Anytime.
Yeah, because like that would probably annoy somebody, and it would be really great if all those conversations happened ahead of time. What if we have a disagreement? How are we resolving the disagreements? All of that stuff. So important.
This is when a duplex comes in handy.
Yeah. Get on the other side of that wall, please.
So depending on how big the house is, you could probably combine this with other strategies though, right?
Oh, for sure. Like, co-buying could make it so that you could buy the duplex or the quadplex instead of the single family. And of course, you can rent out the rooms. You can, maybe you have an ADU that you can also rent out. So yeah, you can definitely stack that with some of the other strategies for sure.
So then what kind of risk are there if you're buying with others?
That's a great question. So I kind of mentioned it earlier with the co-signing, but this credit issues, you know how big of a deal the stupid credit scam is. Like, it is a big deal in our lives to have good credit. And everyone on that loan is equally responsible for it. And so if one person is not paying or can't pay, the other people have to step in or risk this negative credit reporting. Also, like, if you go into title as joint tenants, so you own it 50-50, but one person put up all of the down payment and closing costs money because this person didn't have it, like, that can start to build some resentment over time, right? Because it's not because this person, their 50% share is appreciating in value over time at the same rate of this person's. Like, they're going to equally own it, even though this person put in more to begin with. So that can cause a problem if it's not, like, figured out ahead of time. And then we talked about, like, the breakups or job moves or a falling out could force a sale. And being forced to sell your house is not a great position to be in, especially like take right now. Let's say that we got married and we bought our house in 2021, and it was sort of the height of the market. And we were so happy back then, Tabitha. Remember?
Yes. Very thoroughly remember. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, now we hate each other. And we have got to get rid of this house. We have got to sell it. Well, selling it, there's expenses when you sell it. You're not just paying off the mortgage. There's also some other expenses and closing costs. Biggest one being agent commissions, because you're usually paying both the listing agent and the buyer's agent. So if we bought in 2021 and we don't like each other anymore now in 2025 and we have to sell, like, we might be losing money on that deal.
Right.
Like, it's not pretty.
Right.
Not at all.
So real quick, going back to, like, the credit issue also. I know with the VA loan too, they also utilize the lower credit score for the percentage rate also. So I could also see that being an issue. Well, not like, I mean, it's kind of something you can't really help. So it is what it is, but, like, it's going to make the rate, the overall price could, like, be more, because then.
This is awesome. I have never thought about this. Okay. So back to the example where this person put up all the down payment money and all of the closing costs, and this person put in none. This person has the lower credit score too, right? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any money. They probably have low credit.
And probably made the interest rate go up even higher.
Yeah. So whether it's 2 people or 5 people or whatever on the loan, the interest rate is driven by a lot of different factors. But they only use one person's credit score. And they pull the 3 from the 3 bureaus, And then whoever has the lowest middle score, that's the score they use. So talking about putting all these agreements in place ahead of time, now in my head, I'm like, oh, so now we need to know what interest rate this person qualified for and what interest rate this person qualified for. And then you do that amortization to see, like, what is the interest paid over the life of the loan.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this person now owes that person
even more.
Like, maybe this person should own even less percentage because their credit score caused them to pay more in interest.
Mm-hmm. So not only the down payment.
Yeah.
Lack of.
Smart Tabitha.
Bring a little something to the table,
That's right. That's right.
So even so, it seems like if you get everything you decided on up front, this could be a great way to get into real estate, though.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think that these house hacking strategies really give people some creative ways to get into real estate, especially for people who feel like it's unattainable, unaffordable.
Mhm.
Like, don't make it unattainable, unaffordable for yourself. Like, figure it out.
Yeah.
Come together. Come together.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the end of the video. We're gonna sing a song. Come together right now. Over me. Okay, well, that wraps up this episode of House Hacking Strategies with Kiki the Property Dominator and the lovely Tabitha. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. If you like this content and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go.